The other one, Julia, that we see a lot of mistakes being made on is around maintenance versus repairs. And, so where you're seeing full replacement of things, and the classic example that we've spoken about before is a whole fence as opposed to a section of the fence that might be broken or damaged. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I just want to point out that maintenance and repairs are deductible, providing they fit everything we've talked about. So if you anticipate that you've got to do this to maintain the property in good working order, it doesn't have to be broken before you do it. Okay, so
good point, really good point.
Yeah, but in its entirety, yes, the fence, I was stuck at you like this story, don't you? I was stuck at a seminar once where I was explaining to people, don't rip down the whole fence, only replace it a bit at a time. And there's a tax office ruling saying as long as you do it a bit over time, over many years, even though you've replaced the whole fence in the end, that's all deductible. And a person from the audience said, well, what's the whole fence? Is it the U shape around the back, or is it just one side? And I went, oh, I don't know.
That is a
very good
nuance.
And, there's a builder in the audience that put his hands up, and he said, I'd like to point out that in a lot of cases, this fence here depends on that fence there to support it. So they are an entirety, the whole fence, because of the structural requirement to have this other fence here. Otherwise, they have to put in a whole lot more reinforcing. So on that basis, that's the entirety. So you could replace this side and claim it all as a repair, because meanwhile someone's holding up the fence weed. Put that side back up again. But you get my drift. Just I don't know. There's no test case what the entirety is, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then you mentioned one recently, which we're coming back for now, which is the repairs versus the improvements. So, and the classic example here is moving from, say, a tiled roof or vice versa, from a metal to a tiled roof or vice versa. Tell us about what some of the rulings we've seen out of the tax office in relation to the judgment of whether it's a repair or whether it's actually an improvement.
Well, this is where I say it's hard to reconcile. So you've got things like the example you gave of ripping up the carpet, polishing the floorboards, now assuming that you've had the property for a while, then that's a repair as far as the tax office is concerned. But in another case, they had to go down and do something to the foundations to prop the building up, and that was considered an improvement. Whereas I would have thought the building nearly collapsing is pretty much a repair, or at least maintenance, isn't it? And I think it's just absolutely the opinion of the judges at the time.
Putting new footings in on a property because it's leaning by 6 inches would probably be a repair in my view. But again, we've got to go by the rules. And this is where, your subject matter knowledge is so rich in this property space, because that's what you've been doing for many, many years. So that's just a little message there for anyone. And so the advice, I've got a situation now with one of my properties in Perth, where I've got a leak close to the eave of the property, not in the property itself, and I've got a tiled roof. And, we were thinking about, all right, well, do we just replace that very old property, or do we put, a new tin roof on and give the property a bit more longevity? In that particular example, that's not claimable for me, right? Because I'm not doing just the repair, I'm making the improvements, which means that improvements of putting the new roof on, what would be the treatment of that cost if I went from a tiled roof to a Colourbond roof, in terms of, replacing the whole roof?
Yeah, we're not replacing like with like, but you're doing it the opposite way to what I normally warn people.
Yeah.
So, and there is, the ruling is TR 97/23, and there is an example there where they say, if that's the current modern equivalent, even though it's a better material, if that's the current modern equivalent, then we're all right with that. It's only when you do something better. So I don't think you're going to get it because you're changing, and it's not necessarily the current modern equivalent, but that's what I'd be arguing.
And because I'm doing an extensive change, back to the fence example, where I'm doing the whole roof rather than just the area where there might be a leak into the gutter, would that be considered an improvement?
No, well, the entirety is, because the roof requires the walls to hold it up, the entirety is the whole frame of the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I was able to do what I just said. I put a new Colourbond I'm then able to claim that as a full deduction in this calendar
Especially
year.
if there was Colourbond there before. The bit about the changing tiles is the problem.
Yeah. So again, we'd have to take a little bit of a deeper look into it. But there, again, examples of the nuance, and that's why I always say get some tax advice as part of that particular story.